Hello, everybody. All right, so welcome to the Mikestand. Today is Thursday, December 19th. We are now 6 days away, so under a week away from Christmas. Hopefully, everybody's having a good holiday season this year. Spend time with your family and all that. Of course, before we get started, we're gonna give people a chance to come in. If you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we get some more friendly people in here to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to um, comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. As I said, we're just gonna wait a few minutes to give people a chance to come in. Gigantor, 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 the great big robot is in your hands. Bigger than big, stronger than strong, mighty than wrong. And then Gigantor, Gigantor, Gigantor. Kimber the white lion is the one who's the one down in deepest Africa. Who's the one? Kimber the white lion is the one. Ready. Astro Boy, he comes on his mission today. We'll be thankful. Hey, Astro Boy. There he goes. There goes Speed Racer. He's a demon on wheels. Gonna be chasing after someone. Powerful Mach 5. Favorite work. That Speed Racer. Seeing through. Go Speed Racer. Go Speed Racer. Go Speed Racer. Go. Well, we're at the 3 minute mark, so I guess I'll talk about what's on top for today. So, as I couldn't find much in the way of news tonight, what I decided to do tonight is to go back in time a little bit, do a little of a profile piece on a pretty well-known studio back in the golden age of television, Fleischer Studios. Of course, they're the studios that ultimately gave us Popeye, the early Popeye cartoons. From 1933 to 1942. Betty Boop, of course, the early 40 Superman cartoons as well. Of course, we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about its history and how it came to be, and what happened towards the end. So, also, of course, we'll have wrestling wrap up in a little bit, as well as this day in each history. So now let's see. Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm strong to the finish when I eat my spinach. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I'm strong to the finish when I eat my spinach. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Let's see. All right, so now we're just about 5 minutes in. So why don't we go ahead get started with our feature presentation for the night? Again, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more. friendly people here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. With all that being said, why don't we go ahead and get started here then? All right, so as I said tonight, we're going to go ahead and look back at Fleischer Studios from basically the late 20s to early 40s here. Industry Motion Pictures, predecessor Brave Productions, out of the Inkwell Studios, founded in 1929, which was 95 years ago by Max and Dave Fleischer, the Fleischer brothers. Defunct July 3rd, 1942, 82 years ago today. The fate of the studio renamed and reorganized as Famous Studios after its acquisition by Paramount Pictures and the resignation of its founders. Successors include, of course, Famous Studios, fully owned subsidiary of Paramount Animation, and all that. So, with all that being said, why don't we go ahead and get started here. As I said, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. And with that being said, let's get going here. So Fleischer Studios was an American animation studio founded in 1929 by brothers Max and Dave Fleischer, who ran the pioneering company from its inception until its acquisition by Paramount Pictures, the parent company and the distributor of its films. In its prime, Fleischer Studios was a premier producer of animated cartoons for theaters, with Walt Disney Productions being its chief competitor in the 1930s. Fleischer Studios included Out of the Inkwell and Talkatoons, characters like Coco the Clown, Betty Boop, Bimbo, Papa the Sailor, and comic character Superman. Of course, Betty Boop initially started out as a supporting character to Bimbo, and she was originally an anthropomorphic dog, as opposed to being the more human character we'd be more familiar with. Unlike other studios whose characters were anthropomorphic animals, well, they started out as anthropomorphic animals, to be fair. The Fleischers' most successful characters were humans, with the exception of Bimbo, a black and white cartoon dog. The cartoons of the Fleischer Studio were very different from those of Disney, both in concept and in execution. Let's see. As a result, they were rough rather than refined, and consciously artistic rather than commercial. But in their unique way, their artistry was expressed through a culmination of the arts and sciences. This approach focused on surrealism, dark humor, adult psychological elements, and sexuality. Furthermore, the environments were grittier and urban, often set to squalid surroundings, reflecting the Great Depression as well as German Expressionism. I mean, these cartoons were a product of their time. Were definitely a product of their time. I do need to go off camera here for a moment, so when I come back, we'll start delving into the history here. But while I'm gone, I'll put up some music for you guys. We don't just get it. I'll be right back. I'm back now, so let's continue on going over the history here of Fleischer Studios. Let's see. The Silent Era. The Fleischer Studio was built on Max Fleischer's novelty film series Out of the Inkwell series, which ran from 1918 to 1927. Of course, many of the earlier ones were done by J.R. Bray Productions. The novelty was based largely on the results of the quote-unquote rotoscope invented by Fleischer to produce realistic animation. First out of the Inkwell films were produced through the Bray Studio, as I just mentioned. They featured Fleischer's first character, the clown, quote-unquote, which became known as Coco the Clown in 1924. In 1921, the Bray Studio ran afoul of legal issues, having contracted for more films than it could deliver to its distributor, Goldwyn Pictures, which I believe ended up becoming Metro Goldwyn Mayer, I believe, if I had to hazard a guess. The Fleischer brothers left and began their own studio, Out of the Inkwell Films, with Dave Fleischer as director and production supervisor, and Max as producer, at 129 East 45th Street, later to 1600 Broadway, Midtown Manhattan, New York City. In 1924, animator Dick Humer came to Out of the Inkwell Film Studio and redesigned the clown for more efficient animation. Of course, Dick Humer would go on to work with, in the early 30s, work with Winkler Studios on, I believe I saw his name on the Toby the Pup cartoons recently here. So, anyways, as we continue on, Humer's new design and experience as an animator moved them away from their dependency on the rotoscope for fluid animation. In addition to defining the clown, Humer established the Fleischer style with its distinctive thick and thin ink lines. I guess hence Out of the Inkwell name branding. In addition, Humer created Coco's companion, Fritz the dog, who would evolve into Bimbo in 1930. Bimbo, who became, as Fleischer Studios, Bimbo became Fleischer's first big star under the Fleischer name. Throughout the 1920s, Fleischer was one of the leading producers of animation with clever movements and numerous innovations. These innovations include the rotograph, an early aerial image photographic process for composing animation with live action backgrounds. Other innovations included Coco's song cartoons and sing-along shorts featuring the famous bouncing ball, a precursor to karaoke. Yeah, and if you remember, they actually did this with a Popeye cartoon, for the Popeye theme. And this actually became quite a thing that was, I think, used among a number of different studios, the whole bouncing ball idea. Let's see now. Here we go. We have Brian Sports and Entertainment. Hi, Mike. I've got 285 subscribers. I'm 15 away from reaching 300 subscribers. Well, that's good for you. Keep working. Work hard at it. Keep at it. Eventually, you'll get everything. But anyways, I hope you're enjoying the show here. Anyways, back to the article here, as it were. In 1924, distributor Edwin Miles Fattyman and Hugo Risenfeld formed the Red Seal Pictures Corporation. Risenfeld was the theatrical manager of the Strand, of the Strand, Rivoli, and Rialto theaters on Broadway. All right, I guess so. Because the Out of the Inkwell films were a major part of the program in Risenfeld's theaters, the Fleischers were invited to become partners. The Red Seal Company committed to an ambitious release schedule of 28 films with the Inkwell Studio as the primary supplier. Wow, 28 in a year. That's like 28 divided by 12. That's pretty much 2 1/3. Let's see. That's, 28, and that's like just a little over 2 every month, with maybe a third being being 4 of the month, I guess. Let's see. The following year, Red Seal released 141 films that included documentaries, short comedy subjects, and live-action serials. Carrie of the Chorus, also known as Backstage Comedies, was one of the Red Seal series that featured Max's daughter Ruth in a supporting role. Ray Bolger made his screen debut in the series and dated Ruth for a short time. Red Seal released cartoon novelty series such as The Animated Hare, cartoons by cartoonist Marcus, and Inking's The Animated Hare series resembled the on-screen hard-drawing gimmick established in Out of the Inkwell. In this case, Marcus produced high-quality ink-line portraits of celebrities and political figures. Then, through stop-motion animation techniques, the lines and forms would break away and entertainingly reform the portrait into another. Inklings was similar in concept to the Animated Hare films, but was more of a visual puzzle novelty using a variety of progressive scratch-off reveal techniques that rearranged animated cutouts to change the image. The Animated Hare one reminds me of a concept short that I think it was MGM or maybe it was Warner Brothers came out with years later. The line and the squiggle and the ball and how they would all like kind of interacting with each other. Like came out in the 60s, I believe, late 60s. And I don't know if it was MGM or Warner Brothers, one of the two. It was during this time that Lee DeForest started filming his photofilms experiments, featuring several of the major Broadway headliners. The Red Seal Company began acquiring more theaters outside of New York and equipped them with sound equipment produced by Lee DeForest, displaying talkies. That was an older term for movies that that actually had sound in them. Actually, you hear Colonel Potter use that term in MASH a couple of times. Oh, I believe so. 3 years before the sound revolution began. Because of Max's interest in technology, Risenfeld introduced him to DeForest. It was through this partnership that Max produced a number of the Coco Song cartoons as sound releases. Of the 36 song films produced between 1924 and 1927, 12 were produced as sound films beginning in 1926, with standard silent versions as well. The first sound release was Mother Pin a Rose on Me. Other sound releases included Darling Nellie Gray, Has Anybody Here Seen Kelly, When the Midnight Choo Choo Leaves for Alabama, Coming Through the Rye, My Wife's Gone to the Country, Margie, Oh How I Hate to Get Up in the Morning, Sweet Adeline, Old Black Joe, Come Take a Trip in My Airship, and By the Light of the Silvery Moon. Red Seal owned 56 theaters, extending as far west as Cleveland, Ohio. But after only 2 years of operation, Red Seal was broke. Yeah, uh, yeah, that could happen. I mean, they were heading into the Depression, you know. I don't know if the Depression was still, the stock market crash in 19, it's probably still a year or two away, I guess. But yeah, sometimes when you try to spend too much money too quickly without much returns, that's usually what happens. Anyways, as we continue on here. Let's see, where are we? Oh yeah. So let's see. Max Fleischer sought an appointment of receiver in bankruptcy in October 1926. Just as the situation looked hopeless, Alfred Weiss offered a Paramount contract. The Paramount deal provided financing and distribution, but due to legal complications of the bankruptcy, the title Out of the Inkwell was changed to the Inkwell Imps, 1927 and 1929, and the studio was renamed Inkwell Studios. 1 year into the relationship, the Fleischer brothers discovered mismanagement under Weiss and left before the end of the Imps contract. Out of the Inkwell Films Incorporated filed bankruptcy in January of 1929. In March, Max formed Fleischer Studios with Dave as his partner. Operations were first set up at Carpenter Goldman Laboratories in Queens with a skeleton staff. Fleischer Studios started out doing industrial films, most notably Finding His Voice, a technical demonstration film explaining Western Electric's variable density recording and reproduction system. Max Fleischer secured a new contract with Paramount to produce a revival of the Bouncing Bong Song films, rebranded as Screen Songs, with The Sidewalks of New York as the first release on February 5th, 1929. Sound films. Let's see. Sound films now. The early experiments with sound synchronization gave Fleischer Studios experience in perfecting the post-production method of recording, aided by several inventions by founder Max Fleischer. With the conversion to sound, Paramount needed more sound film cartoons could be produced faster than feature films. As the screen songs returned, Fleischer to the established song film format. A new sound series, Talkertoons, which I can tell you in 1930 were headlined by Bimbo, the dog, cartoon dog, replaced the silent inkwell imps, the first being Noah's Lark, released on October 25th, 1929. Earlier entries in the series were one-shot cartoons until the appearance of Bobo as of the fourth entry. Bimbo evolved through several redesigns in each cartoon for the first year. While the intent was to develop him as the star of the series, it was the cameo appearance of a Helen Kane caricature in the seventh entry, Dizzy Ditches, that took center stage. Now, I'll wait a sec to read on to see if you guys can pretty much try to guess who that was. Let's see if anybody can guess who that was in the chat there. Nobody's going to answer that, then I will go ahead and read through the rest of the paragraph, and we'll get to the point where audiences' reactions to the New York preview were so great that Paramount encouraged the continued development of the most famous character to come from Fleischer Studios by that time, Betty Boop. Betty Boop, people. She started out as a supporting character in the Bimbo cartoon. She was she wasn't even a fully human character at that point. She was more of an anthropomorphic dog who would serve as Bimbo's companion, friend, and at times romantic interest. While originated as a hybrid human canine character, Betty Boop was transformed into the human character she is known as by 1932. Having become the main attraction of the Talkertoons, she was given her own series, which ran until 1939. And we talked about of course, a number of the voices who've done Betty Boop throughout that time, including, of course, Mae Quetzal, Bonnie Poe, Margie Hines. I think they said there was one other who lent her voice as well. The quote-unquote Jazz Baby Flapper character, Betty Boop, lifted the spirits of Depression-era audiences with her paradoxical mixture of childlike innocence and sexual allure, which of course had to be toned down after the Hays Code came into effect in 1934, I believe. Being a musical novelty character, she was a natural for theatrical entertainment. Several of her early cartoons were developed as promotional vehicles for some of the top black jazz performers of the day, including Louis Armstrong, I'll Be Glad When You're Dead, You Rascal, You, Don Redman, I Heard, and most notably, 3 cartoons made with Cab Calloway, Minnie the Moocher, Snow White and the Old Man and the Mountain. This was considered a bold action in light of Jim Crow policies active in the South where such films would not be shown. And here's where I was talking about with the Hays Code. In 1934, the Hays Code resulted in severe censorship for films. This affected the content of all of Paramount's films as well, which tended to reflect a more mature tone in the features of the Marx Brothers, W.C. Fields, and most of all, Mae West. As a result, each of these stars were released as Paramount changed the content of their films to reflect a more general audience, quote unquote, in order to comply with the new code and stay in business. Paramount had also gone through 3 reorganizations from bankruptcy between 1931 and 1936. The new management under Barney Balaban set out to make more general audience films of the type made at MGM, but for lower budgets. This change in content policy affected the content of cartoons that Fleischer was to produce for Paramount, which urged emulation of the Walt Disney product. While Paramount was a large organization with a network of theaters, its fiscal consciousness was largely responsible for preventing Fleischer Studios from acquiring the 3-strip Technicolor process, leaving it available for 4-year exclusivity with Disney, who created a new market for color cartoons established by Academy Award winner Flowers and Trees in 1932. Let's see. And again, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So as we continue on here, Paramount acquiesced to the release of the Color Classic series starting in 1934, but with the exclusivity of the 3-color process still held by Disney, Fleischer used the available 2-color process, Cinecolor, a 2 emulsion red and blue process, and 2-color Technicolor using red and green. Some of you, I know that you can see some of these on on YouTube if you guys go out and look for them using red and green. By 1936, Disney exclusivity had expired, and Fleischer used the 3-color process in its color cartoons, beginning with Somewhere in Dreamland, and continued using it for the remainder of its active years. The Fleischer Studios' greatest success came in the licensing of E.C. Seeger's comic strip character Popeye the Sailor Man beginning in 1933. Popeye eventually became the most popular series in the studio ever produced, and its success surpassed Walt Disney's Mickey Mouse character. Popeye was probably more from the get-go more of a type of character that fit in with the Hays Code properties there. Let's see. Documented by popularity polls, the availability of full spectrum color Fleischer Studios produced 3 two-reel Popeye featurettes: Popeye the Sailor Meets Sinbad the Sailor in 1936, and Popeye the Sailor Meets Alibaba's 40 Thieves in 1937, and Popeye the Sailor Meets Aladdin's Wonderful Lamp in 1939. All three of these you can catch, of course, on MeTV Tunes, among other things. They're out there. So the series of longer format cartoons were an indication of the emergence that animated feature film as a commercially viable project, beginning with Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937. The Fleischer Studios had reached its zenith in 1936 with 4 series and 52 annual releases. Due to the phenomenal success of the Popeye cartoons, Paramount demanded more, and Fleischer Studio experienced rapid expansion in order to balance out the increased workload. The crowded conditions, production speedups, and drawing quotas, and internal management problems resulted in a labor strike beginning in May of 1937, which lasted for 5 months. The strike was a test case, the first launched in the motion picture industry, produced a nationwide boycott of Fleischer cartoons for the duration. Let's see here. All right, so let's see now. See if anybody's saying anything yet, and then we will go back to the article here. It's not, but at least somebody's watching, so that's good. Again, feel free to comment or ask questions if anything here grabs your attention. Let's see. So Max Fleischer had been petitioning Paramount for 3 years about producing an animated feature. Paramount vetoed his proposals until the proven success of Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, 1937. Paramount now wanted an animated feature for a 1939 Christmas release. The request came at the time of preparation for relocating to Miami, Florida. Now, this was also around the time where Mae Quetzal had ended up leaving the role of Olive Oyl to stay home and stay in New York so she could raise a family, where Margie Hines from like 1938 to 1942 had replaced Mae Quetzal in that like 5-year period as the voice of Olive Oyl. 4 or 5 year period there. Let's see. While relocation had been a consideration for some time, its final motivation was made a reality due to lower corporate tax structures and an alleged escape from the remaining hostility from the strike. The new Fleischer Studio opened in October 1938, and production on its first feature, Gulliver's Travels, 1939, went from the development stage begun in New York to active production in Miami. The score was by Paramount staff composer Victor Young and recorded at Paramount West Coast facilities. While limited to only 60 theaters in a 1-month release, Gulliver's Travels earned more than $3 million in spite of exceeding its $500,000 estimated cost. Accordingly, a second feature was ordered for the Christmas period, Mr. Bug Goes to Town, 1941, which, as I understand it, that one did not do quite as well as Gulliver's Travels did. And I think they'll get into that here in this next part. The Fall of Fleischer. The Fall of Fleischer. $41. The personal relationship between Max and Dave Fleischer deteriorated during the Miami period due to complications associated with the pressures of finishing the studio's first feature film and Dave's very public adulterous affair with his secretary, Mae Schwartz. Max and Dave stopped speaking to each other altogether at the end of 1939, communicating solely by memo. Yeah, that can be kind of problematic when you guys are working on a project together. Dave gained total control of production in 1940, relegating Max to business affairs and research. The studio Excuse me a moment, folks. I need to check something real quick. Let me put some music on here for a moment. Be right back. All right, sorry about that. My nephew just got home. That's what it was. Anyways, back to this here, and we'll just go up to the end of this and then wrap things up from this point because we were just looking at the Fleischer portion of this. I've done famous studios before, so. Let's see. Where are we at now? Oh, yeah. The studio was in need of new products going into the new decade. Yeah. But a new shorts and series that debuted in 1939-1940, Gabby, Stone Age cartoons, and animated antics, were unsuccessful. Theater operators complained with the Popeye cartoons having the only value. Paramount acquired the rights to comic book superhero Superman in 1941, and the Fleischers were assigned to work on a series of animated Superman shorts. The first entry, Superman, had a budget of $50,000, the highest ever for a Fleischer theatrical short, and was nominated for an Academy Award. The animated Superman series, with its action, adventure, and science fiction fantasy content, was a huge success. But that did not help the studio out of its financial trouble. It was penalized $350,000 for going over budget on Gulliver's Travels, and the revenues earned from The rentals of the Popeye cartoons had to be used to offset the loss of $250,000 incurred by the rejection of cartoons in 1940. So that's as far as we'll take it today. We're just going to basically the summation of what happened afterwards. Of course, Paramount eventually bought out um, Fleischer Studios, renaming it Famous Studios. They kind of pushed the Fleischer brothers out. They said, "Hey, look, if you guys can't work together, then we can't work with you. So why don't you just let us buy it, and then you guys can just go and deal with your issues." You know, so that's kind of what more or less happened there. So, anyways, that's all I got for that part tonight. So, what we'll do now is we'll move on to the wrestling wrap up, as we do have quite a few things to go over there. First off, we're going to look back to last night's. Dynamite. Talk about what happened on last night's Dynamite. Real quickly here, as the opening match saw Mercedes Moné retain the TBS title over Anna Jay. The Patriarchy, Christian Cage and Nick Wayne, defeat Hook and Katsuyori Shibata. In Continental Classic action in the Blue League match, Shelton Benjamin gained another 3 points, defeating Beef Mortos. Mortos still shut out in the tournament. And in a Gold League match, Darby Allin defeated Will Ospreay, gaining 6 points and tying, becoming part of the big tie between like three guys, the two of them, and Claudio Castagnoli for first place in terms of. In the main event, saw the Death Riders of Jon Moxley and AEW World Champion Jon Moxley and 2/3 of the trios champions of Pac and Wheeler Yuta with Claudio Castagnoli and Nina Shafir in their corner, defeating Orange Cassidy, Adam Page, and Jay White. And then moving on to look ahead to tonight's Impact, as soon as I can find it, I guess. I think there was some Impact tapings did happen this past Saturday. I recall. And it would appear they don't have anything up for that as of yet, apparently. Unless, of course, this is it right here. Oh, so yeah, tonight, part one. They're going to have part one of the Best of 2024 episode for Impact. They did have an Impact taping the day after Final Resolution, but I guess now they're doing the Best of 2024 for the remainder of 2024. I would gather, as their next big event isn't until next month. So, let's see. Let's look. Tonight's Ring of Honor, which will be the go home Ring of Honor before tomorrow night's Final Battle. We'll talk more about Final Battle tomorrow, of course. As soon as I find that, grab that. So tonight's Ring of Honor show on Honor Club. taking place in the Chavez Arena in St. Louis, Missouri, with Caprice Coleman and Ian Riccaboni on commentary on ringofhonorwrestling.com. You'll see the matches include Serpentico taking on Sydney Akeem, Iron Savages of Beefcake Boulder and Bulk Bronson taking on the Murder Machines of Brian Cage and Lance Archer, with Don Callis corner with Cage preparing for his upcoming World Television title defense tomorrow night. Tina and Billy Starks take on Blair Onyx and Missa Kate. In a battle of singles wrestlers from one half of Lee Johnson with EJ Naduka, his corner, takes on one half of the Gates of Agony, Bishop Khan with Toa Leona in his corner. Lady Frost takes on Queen Aminata, and then in an 8-man tag, the former New Japan Strong open weight tag team champions James Drake and Zach Gibson, Grizzled Young Veterans, team with Shane Taylor Promotions duo of Ring of Honor Pure Champion Lee Moriarty and Shane Taylor to take on the Dark Order, members of Alex Reynolds and Evil Uno, and Disputed Kingdom of Mike Bennett and Matt Taven with John Silver in their corner. So with that, that's all I have for tonight on the wrestling wrap up. So let's now take a look with today being Thursday, December 19th. Let's take a look back at this day in Nietzsche history. So first I'm going to head back 25 years ago. As on this date 25 years ago today, WCW held its Starrcade event from the MCI Center in Washington, D.C. The main event saw Bret Hart defeat Goldberg in a no disqualification match to retain the WCW World Heavyweight title. Chris Benoit defeated Jeff Jarrett in a ladder match to win the WCW United States Championship. In a Master of the Powerbomb match, Kevin Nash defeated Sid Vicious. In a battle of two friends, Sting defeated the Total Package by DQ. In a crowbar on a pole match, Diamond Dallas Page defeated David Flair. Jeff Jarrett defeated Dustin Rhodes in a bunkhouse brawl match. Vampiro was involved in two matches, defeating both Dr. Death Steve Williams and Oklahoma. I guess the match with Dr. Death Steve Williams was that if Vampiro beat him, he had a chance to go after Oklahoma, a.k.a. Ed Ferrara. The team of Revolution of Asia, Shane Douglas, Dean Malenko, and Perry Saturn defeated the team of Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Varsity Club of Kevin Sullivan, Mike Rotunda, and Rick Steiner with Leah Meow. Medusa defeated Evan Courageous to become the new WCW World Cruiserweight Champion, and the show opened up with the Mamalukes of Big Vito and Johnny the Bull defeating Disco Inferno and Lash LaRue. That all happened 25 years ago on this date. Starrcade from the WCW. Now moving on to the next piece in each history as we move ahead to 2009, which of course was 15 years ago. As on this date, 15 years ago today. On this date, 15 years ago today, Toho's Professor Layton and the Eternal Diva premiered in movie theaters on this date in back in 2009. So the film is based on the Professor Layton video game series by Level 5, taking place between the events of the video games Professor Layton and the Last Spectre and Professor Layton and the Miracle Mask. In the story, renowned opera star Janice Quatlane contacts her former teacher, Professor Herschel Layton, after encountering a young girl who claims to be the reincarnation of her dead friend. While Layton and his apprentice, Luke Triton, are attending one of Janice's performances, they get unwillingly pulled into a puzzle-themed battle royal where the winner will apparently receive, quote-unquote, the gift of eternal life. According to Level 5, the film stays true to the game with music, puzzles, and characters. So on this date, 15 years ago today, Toho's Professor Layton and the Eternal Diva premiered in movie theaters in Japan on this date 15 years ago today. Now moving ahead to 10 years ago today, back in 2014, on this date in 2014. On this date in 2014, premiering on Netflix was DreamWorks Animation's All Hail King Julian. On this date, 10 years ago today, DreamWorks All Hail King Julian premiered on Netflix on this date 10 years ago today, which was based on, I guess, the Madagascar franchise. And finally, as we move ahead to the last piece of the moving ahead to just 6 years ago today, back in 2018, on this date in 2018, the 25th issue of Volume 6 of Teen Titans went on sale on this date back in 2018. So for $4.99, it was 48 pages. The two stories featured in it were from the Teen Titans, the girl who fell from the sky, and then the same old ground. So anyways, with all that being said, I hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. We'll be back here with more Needs News tomorrow, of course. Also, this Sunday, Rick Piper will be joining me as we will be looking back to comics that went on sale in April 1940. This week we'll be looking at comics that went on sale from Fawcett Comics. We'll be looking at Wiz Comics Volume 1, Issue 5. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye!